Welcome back to the only show that covers all things Laker sports. It's Laker Connections on WTOP. I'm Thomas Turgeon, and he's Jared Wakefield. Jared, it's been a really busy week for Laker sports.
Oh, I mean, goodness gracious. I mean, last Saturday you had that quadruple header that had myself as a photographer and Aaron Blank and everybody else running back and forth. Busy weekend overall. A couple teams on the road. This week we'll take a look at it the week ahead. Another busy week. It's not slowing down.
Absolutely, and it's clearly a hectic week for Oswego State Athletics as we start things off in women's lacrosse, where they are coming off of a dominant weekend for senior day against Plattsburgh, winning 17-6 to send out the 5 seniors out on a dub at home before capturing another one on the road down at Buffalo State by a score of 16-10 to win their 4th win in a row going into the final 2 games of the season. Jared, this team is rolling going into a pair of Dragons' dens to wrap up the year, and looking so far so good for Britt Howard and company.
Yeah, I mean, women's lacrosse, we expected them to sort of bounce back this year, but I don't know if we really expected them to be this good this year. I mean, look, being 11-3 coming into it and 6-1 at home, I think that's more than Britt Howard and crew would have asked for. They are 6-1 in conference overall as well. I mean, it seems like they've certainly been fantastic all year. And CeeLo Wiley, I mean, there's a couple games left, but Turge, I got to wonder if she'll hit the 100-point mark.
She is just really close. And Sarah Kamai, 12 saves in the win against Plattsburgh. I think that was huge for her. Only 5 saves in that win against Buffalo State. A little bit concerning. I thought Buffalo State held them pretty tight, and Buffalo getting 3 goals in the first minute, 28 seconds after halftime to bring it within 1. Oswego would respond with 4 goals in the third, but Madison Davis coming back into the lineup in the Plattsburgh game, getting 3 goals there. She had 2 against Buffalo State. Shea McConnell with 3. Julia Quirk with the majority, though, with the 6, getting a huge job done on her end. But Oswego, they're looking really good going in their final few games.
Yeah, absolutely. A huge win against Plattsburgh. They did everything that they needed to do. And against Buffalo State, you know, they come away with the win and probably one of their less pretty games of the year. I mean, Buffalo State, that score needs to look like that Plattsburgh score or that SUNY Potsdam score, not 16-10. They let the Bengals a little bit too far out of their cage, but they'll work their way back into it. And the hot streak for men's lacrosse over on the turf also came to an end this past week as they split their matchups. Importantly, the Lakers grounded the New Paltz Hawks by a final score of 10-6 in their nest. The lacrosse team then traveled down to the Southern Tier for a date with the Alfred Saxons. Saxons crusaded their way right past the Lakers, handing Oswego a 5-13 loss. Turge, a big win this past weekend in conference play, but the Saxons sour the momentum for the lacrosse team.
Yeah, it was a little bit of an owie on the second game around, but other than that, though, a lot of offensive takeaways. Corey O'Connor with 5 goals on 6 shots in the game against New Paltz. A really low-scoring affair. Oswego notching 3 going into the half, and it was a first quarter 3-3 tie after 1, so really a close contest in New Paltz. Alfred, that was a tough one. You're on the road. It's a non-conference game. You kind of probably took the pedal off the metal a little bit. Oswego held off the board 7-0 at the half. Not an ideal start for the Lakers on the road, and they really just couldn't find the back of the net. Their shooting was there. They got a lot of shots on goal in that game against Alfred. Just couldn't solve a hot goaltender until the second half.
No, and that definitely paints a different picture. 6-5 in those last 2 quarters of play. So the Lakers able to play with the Saxons, just not getting the ball luck, and Saxons having a good day in net. That's kind of going to be, you got to shake that loss off, even though it's out of conference. And it's weird to see out of conference this late in the year. A bit of a weird trip, but they got to shake this loss off because, as we'll see later on, huge week coming up.
Most definitely a huge week coming up for the Lakers. But on the other hand, you look at that game in New Paltz. It was a close game nonetheless, but 2 points is huge, or really just a win, as the SUNY lacrosse doesn't go by the point system, but they definitely get the job done, 1 step closer up to that 1 seed. As we move over to the Diamond now, where the Lakers baseball team was not embracing the nice weather this past weekend as they lost the series against the St. John Fisher Cardinals and losing 2 of the 3 games on their home field. Oswego would be unable to contain the Cardinals' bats as they would tally 35 runs in 2 games here in the Port City. Oswego would go against Ithaca on Tuesday and also record a loss against the Bombers 12-4. Well, this team, Jared, is really on a roller coaster of pain and victory, and I think they need to kind of get off this ride, maybe try another one and try and string together some wins.
Absolutely. I mean, it's Been a bit of a weird year to Sean Featherstone in that matchup against Ithaca. 3 for 4, 2 RBI, 1 RBI in the first and the sixth. The story with that Ithaca game, they're playing a top-ranked team in the nation. They were in the top 20 at one point. What kind of came down to Turge is just having runners in base and getting the hits at the right time. The Lakers had the hits, but would leave men stranded. Ithaca did not do that as they won 12-4 against St. John Fisher. Beautiful day. A lot of Laker fans came out to support. It just never really got started. I mean, that they won that game on the road in Ra-Cha-Cha against St. John Fisher, but after that, it just sort of fell apart. Kieran Finnegan had an okay day on the mound, but it still wasn't enough as St. John Fisher would start to tee off on him later on and kind of ballooned his pretty low ERA to start the year, taking the first game 15-7, getting 5 runs in the third inning off of Finnegan. Now with the Lakers needed out of the race, they fall to 13-12 after that set of losses.
Most definitely not. And not really a good turn of events for the Lakers, is winning only one of their last 4 games. And that Friday game for Oswego State, Frank Leventi and Owen Parliament, both 3 runs and 2 hits for the Lakers to get the job done. St. John Fisher would try and get a last-minute rally, but it just wasn't enough. But Saturday, game 1, was just ridiculous. Saturday, 16 hits for Fisher compared to the Oswego 11. Like you said, Jared, they were just able to score when the men were on base. So nonetheless, the baseball team needs to kind of turn things around.
Bit of a tough weekend against out-of-conference opponents for the baseball team, but it was in conference for Oswego State Golf as they wrapped up their trip to Candytown this past weekend, teeing off in Hershey, Pennsylvania in the Empire 8 Spring Championship. Oswego finished second overall. They shot .1275 on the weekend. Ryan Fecko placed third, shooting .310 with Jake Owens in fifth, Oliver Walland in 10th, and Tyler Donahue tying for 11th, putting almost all of the Lakers near the top of the tourney. Thomas, a great start for the green and gold as they looked ahead to the Elmira Invitational.
I think this was huge, and we talked about this last week. You're playing the same course in just a matter in between 2 weeks, and you're playing another round as well here in the Empire 8 Spring Championship. So being able to play that same course in just a span of a few short weeks, almost 5 times, was really huge to get even just familiar with the course, the fairways, the roughs, being able to putt on those greens. Obviously, they're going to change the hole placement every day, but you look at how the Lakers tore up that leaderboard. A lot of teams in the Empire 8, Ryan Fecko, third in the entire group of .310, and then Owens not far behind him. We saw that in the Hershey tournament a little bit ago, but overall, a good start for the golf team.
Absolutely, and you know, they've got the Elmira Spring Invitational on Tuesday, and then they have a home meet. They're going to have the Oswego Spring Ring at Oswego Country Club this next weekend. But that's going to do it for our look back on the past week. So when we come back after the break, Turge and I are going to kick the rearview mirror off and take a look at baseball and softball with the Diamond Dogs. Don't go anywhere. This is Laker Connections.
Put the keys down, Kevin.
But I'm gonna drive home.
There are several warning signs present that you shouldn't be driving.
I guess I have really been looking for love in this dating app. Yep, I'm definitely gonna call a ride home.
We'll deep dive into our feelings in our Real Talk segment. Stay tuned because it's about to get real.
What's going on?
Yeah, dude, we go on at like 11:30. It's like
No.
What do you mean no?
It's 10:30.
10:30?
Matt, it's 10:30.
What do you mean it's 10:30?
Hey, don't touch that. That's my ladder.
Hey, man.
Whoa. Did you know this book was already discounted 10%?
Wow.
Wow.
Get a close-up of that one.
Broadcast news.
Look at that.
Can we go back inside? I want to sleep in the studio again.
Welcome back to Laker Connections right here on WTOP 10. Turge, Wakefield, we got the past behind us. So into the future canoe where we paddle our way to this week ahead specifically on the Diamond. It's the Diamond Dogs.
Absolutely. So we'll take a look at some Diamond Dogs, and we'll start off on the bigger of the Diamonds, Oswego baseball, as they begin the first leg of a 9-game final stand at home. Oswego continues their SUNYAC playoff pursuit with a tripleheader this weekend against the Plattsburgh State Cardinals. They'll then play at 3 o'clock on Friday before an 11 and 2 p.m. doubleheader on Saturday. The Lakers aren't done with the North Country yet either. They'll host the Clarkson Golden Knights for an evening doubleheader on Tuesday. Turge, Oswego's comfortably in the playoffs as of now, but how do they make up ground on number 1 Cortland and number 2 Brockport head the rest of the way?
Well, obviously the Lakers right now currently trailing a few, really the powerhouse teams in the SUNYAC right now. Granted, the Clarkson game won't count, but it was a close battle last year, splitting the series last year against the Golden Knights. But Plattsburgh, this is a series where the Lakers really need to sweep all 3. They've won the last 21, and they have not lost at home since 2014. So in Plattsburgh, even worse, 2-8 on the road this year. Feel like it's a must-win for Oswego State going in against the Cardinals.
It's not only a must-win, I feel like it's a must-sweep all 3 with some comfort. I mean, it feels like you're playing Fredonia or New Paltz here.
I mean, it's pretty simple.
Yeah, I mean, they had no problem dealing with Fredonia or New Paltz. This Oswego team's still pretty good when it comes to the SUNYAC, but we are not seeing a nationally ranked team like we were last year so far throughout. So Oswego's got to get it done. They got to find something with those younger pitchers. I almost said undergraduate, but they're almost all undergraduates, 4-year school. But they got to find something in those underclassmen pitchers. They struggled last year, but they really didn't need to go there. You know, they were able to rely on Finnegan and Van Fossen for a good chunk of it this year. Really, they've only had Finnegan so far this year, and losing Van Fossen, a huge loss. And the bats, honestly, surprisingly, have been there pretty good. You know, Enos and Tamaro, great, but, you know, everybody else still hitting 300. But, again, it's not the 500 that Enos and Tamaro were hitting halfway in the year.
Not even close. And speaking of 300, Plattsburgh, only 1 batter batting above 300. I feel like that's a red flag for Oswego State and how they're able to capitalize. It's definitely going to be on the bats and not as much on the pitching.
Red flag for Redbirds.
Red flag for Redbirds. But the softball team also in action this weekend, but taking a nice trip down to the greater Rochester area with the doubleheaders on both Friday and Saturday, facing off against the Geneseo Knights on Friday and the Brockport Golden Eagles the following day. The Lakers, ironically enough, have 9 wins only against each opponent on the road and are both on current losing streaks. Jared, a concerning season for the softball team in the playoffs. They're right on the edge of making it in, but clearly a tough hill to climb, being 2 games behind Potsdam.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough hill, and they've got those tough conference opponents. As we take a look at the standings, the Hawks, Oswego actually played against the Hawks very well in the first of a doubleheader this past weekend. I thought it was a relative success for softball. They were able to play them close and make it a good challenge. New Paltz 7-1. Buff State, the Bengals, really good this year, as well as the Cardinals. They played Oneonta fairly well. They handed Oneonta one of their losses in a game that I called with Ryan Joyce earlier this year. So that's a good sign for the Lakers, but they're still out of the playoffs. I mean, they have really struggled. You can see they're there at the bottom of the conference. They played more games than anybody else. Must win against Potsdam to even sniff it, and they need to at least take 1 against Geneseo or Brockport. Ideally, 1 from both, and try to get a split. You're going to have to pitch Higgins both days and hope Higgins can pitch some shutout ball and the Lakers bats heat up, which honestly it hasn't been too bad. Hayflitch hitting 319, Higgins 299, but hitting the ball pretty hard at a 403 slugging. They've been going with Ellie Mahoney behind the dish lately so far. We haven't seen a lot of Madison Finney as they've alternated in and out. Finney actually falling out of the qualifying numbers, but she's hit 360 so far this year.
Absolutely. And you look at these 2 teams that Oswego's being able to go against. Geneseo in particular on Friday, coming off of a 3-game win streak and right around the middle of the pack as we saw in the standings there, sitting at 4-4 in the conference. However, they do have the top hitter in the SUNYAC right now, Brooke Frost, batting .500 perfect on the dot with 21 runs and 35 hits, and that's going to be a tough test for her and the Lakers. But on the other hand, Brockport, Oswego has lost only the last 2, so not too bad of an issue.
Not bad at all.
Well, either way, that's going to do it for the Diamond Dogs. When we come back, it's the Lax Lowdown and the latest on the Laker turf, coming right up after this.
Jill
Should
told
we
me it
tell
was
him?
Kitty from Glee. Yeah. What is
It's
it?
Al Roker.
We're here for you, we're here for you. This is your channel too. With sports and news and what to do, we're here for you. It's your TV, you're watching WTLP. Your TV, thanks for watching WTLP.
What's going on?
Yeah, dude, we go on at like 11:30. It's like,
No.
what do you mean no?
It's 10:30.
10:30?
Yeah, it's 10:30.
What do you mean it's 10:30?
Hey, don't touch that. That's my ladder.
Hey, man.
Whoa. You know this book was already discounted 10%?
Wow.
Wow.
Get a close up of that one.
Broadcast news.
Look at that.
Can we go back inside? I want to sleep in the studio again.
Welcome back to Laker Connections. It's the Lax Lowdown on WTOP 10. Both lacrosse teams are starting to move in the right direction. Jared, women's lacrosse to the Dragon's Den with our swords and shields.
A whole lot of Dragon's Dens, as they're going to play two teams in the same conference with basically the same name. The SUNYAC women's lacrosse playoffs are basically set for this year with all 6 teams that are making it and everybody else already going home well before the season's over. And Oswego and Oneonta just happen to be both in this year's championship chase. Lakers will get the taste of a potential playoff matchup as they face off against the currently 6-seeded Oneonta Red Dragons. Turge, this is a key game for Oswego to put pressure on Cortland and Geneseo to perform as Oswego sits in third behind that pair.
Oswego's looking to host the playoffs for quite some time, and one of the key factors has been how well Sarah Kamide has done in her sophomore year. And this is one of the bigger games for the Lakers, a first-round SUNYAC final matchup from last year against the Oneonta Red Dragons. Julia Quirk also in that game, 6 goals, just a little bit of just a preview of what was actually in Buffalo State. Quirk getting 6 goals there as well in a 14-12 loss. Overall, very close.
Absolutely, a very close matchup.
Overall, a very close matchup for the women's lacrosse team. But with the season fading away, the Lakers will play their final game of the season against the top team in the conference in the Cortland Red Dragons. Oswego's never beaten Cortland in program history. However, one game separates the teams in the standings. Jared, we've seen this program make strides this season. What's it going to take to get rid of these pesky Dragons?
I don't know. All I'm going to say is that way back on yonder in a Lakers showdown, I said women's lacrosse had the makings for a pretty deep playoff run. I would say being the 3rd seed's a pretty deep playoff run, or at least certainly sets them up for it. Oswego 6-1 overall on the year, only taking that loss to Geneseo, who remains undefeated. One of those teams is going to have to lose at some point, and it could very well be Cortland on their turf sooner rather than later. And Oswego, I think, if Kamide plays well and they win the ground ball battle and they're smart and they can kill clock once they're up, which has pretty much been their MO under Britt Howard this year, they've got a pretty good shot as long as they can keep the game from getting a little bit out of hand like it did in Geneseo and not be a little sloppy like they were against Buffalo State. Even though they won that game, they can make it happen.
Overall, women's lacrosse against Cortland never defeated them. However, last season, Oswego only limited to 4 goals, Jared. That's a big issue going into next week.
Absolutely. Let's talk about some undefeated teams. Oswego and Geneseo are both undefeated so far in 2023. But one of them is going to have to lose on Senior Saturday for men's lacrosse. It's Oswego's final regular home game of the year, regular season home game, and they'll look to claim sole ownership of the top seed in the SUNYAC. Turge, this is the biggest test of the year for Andrew Daly and his team.
Well, new coach and old coach, as Drew Bezek will come back to town, the previous coach before Sean Eccles, really primary first year for the Lakers last season, but they definitely have a big test. Oswego looking for their first win since 2015 on their home turf. And like you said, the 2 top teams in the SUNYAC on Saturday, But you got 3 guys to look out for with Marcello, Sullivan, and Atkinson, all with plus 40 points.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting. They're a more high-flying team than this Oswego men's lacrosse team, a bit more defensive on their end. Aiden Kenyon is going to have to be on point, or they're going to be in some trouble.
It's going to be a big test for the Lakers against Geneseo, but we're not sure if the SUNYAC wanted to place Oswego's closest opponent for 2 games on the same day, but the men's lacrosse team will also battle Cortland to wrap the year, much with the same fate as the women's. Very close, but not at the top of the mountain yet. Jared, show me Dragon.
Yeah, I mean,
we're back at it.
I mean, this is exactly, I think, what you want if you're Oswego State as well. I mean, Cortland, how many sports does Cortland have to be good at? They've had a pretty solid men's hockey program, a very good women's hockey program, and it feels like almost every sport we talk about, soccer, lacrosse, baseball, men's hockey, women's hockey, every single sport we talk about with the Cortland Red Dragons, they are very good. They are like one of the top schools in terms of athletic pedigree across the board in the SUNYAC. They're there all 3 seasons during the academic year that we play sports, and they're going to look for another big one against Oswego.
This is going to be a big game, and I said it last year. The game against Cortland last year, only a 4-goal loss against the Red Dragons here on the home turf, making some steps towards a potential upset for the first time.
Absolutely, and it's time for us to take some little steps. We're going to head into the break, and when we come back, we're stepping right into Laker Showdown, and Tommy T is going to step right in here when we come back.
Welcome back to Major Discussions.
Did you know dragging chains can spark a wildfire?
Only you can prevent wildfires.
When I was in foster care, I never knew when I would have to move. So I always had my suitcase ready to go. Then one day I was adopted. My new parents opened their hearts and home to me. My parents cook my favorite breakfast for me every morning. My parents take me on trips I never thought I would go on. They gave me a home and an even better reason to use that suitcase. My parents aren't perfect, but they're perfect for me.
Hey there, I'm Al Roker, class of 76. Yes, way back in 76. Back when the earth was cooling. You're watching WTOP.
Welcome back to Laker Connections, and I don't know about you gentlemen, but it's showdown time!
You did that so late.
For Laker Showdown.
That's a forfeit.
Jared. Starting out, we're going on the dime.
Okay.
With the baseball team. They're currently on a 3-game losing streak, and they have an important 3-game series this weekend. If they lose all 3, there's potential they drop to 5th in the SUNYAC. Guys, what do they have to do different to stay in 3rd in the division? I'm going to start with Jared. Jared gets the first one.
Well, Tommy, I'm going to keep this really simple because I don't know how else to put this. But when you have one pitcher who qualifies innings-wise below an ERA of 5, that's a problem. That's a serious problem when you have multiple pitchers coming up into a game.
Bad.
And the only one, the only one you can really trust is Kieran Finnegan. And the last time we saw him, the Cardinals filleted Finnegan up. So the pitching's got to be better. I mean, Finnegan's pitched 42 innings already this year. The next highest has 22, and that's Van Fossen. His ERA is over 10. So you've got to find somebody to at least maybe get to 3 or 4.
Fair enough, fair enough.
I'm gonna go
got,
with
Turge?
I'm gonna go with the issue that was plaguing them against Ithaca. You gotta be able to run the bases and score. It's pretty simple. You had 15 or so hits against Ithaca. Ithaca had, I want to say, 16 or 17, so only 2 different. But the runs were completely different, and that's why they got 15 runs. Oswego only got 4. You gotta get the more runs to win the actual game itself. I mean, Jared makes a very good point with pitching, but on the other hand, you got to be able to score. Like, you can only rely on your pitchers so much. The bats need to connect, and they need to be able to get runners in scoring position.
You guys both made great points, but, Turge, sometimes, the runs were still there in those games. They were still scoring around 5 runs, a little bit above it. And a wise man once said, you're not aiming for home runs every hit. You get a single sometimes, that'll do. But Jared, the pitching, it's been a problem all year. This is the game to turn around, I think. I got to give it to Jared. I'm sorry.
That's a good point, too.
I will forgive you. It's okay.
It's okay.
It's okay.
The men's lacrosse team has a huge game against SUNY Geneseo this Saturday at Laker Turf. These 2 teams sit at the top of the SUNYAC, and the winner would be in first place. Guys, what do the Lakers have to do to snap the 4-game losing streak to Jenny and get to first place in the SUNYAC? Turge, take it away.
I think it's going to be really solely on how you contain this Geneseo defense and offense, and it's going to start with Aiden Kenyon on the back end. He's been pretty solid, but on the other hand, you've got a lot of offense that Geneseo is bringing to the table. I mentioned 3 guys plus 40 points, and that's really an issue. I mean, you look at Oswego, they got Elston, they got Corey O'Connor, they got Max Broadman, but you got to get the offense first before you turn it into defense. You let teams like Plattsburgh in it and have chances. Oneonta on the same time also had chances. It's going to start on your defensive end against Drew Bezak.
I'm going to jump in here. We'll go with Oswego, and I think the key for Oswego has been all year. We look at guys like Corey O'Connor, Gavin Nelson, Aiden Kenyon. Those are the really attractive, the really flashy stat sheet picks. But I'm going to go with they need guys like Tyler Stevenson and Logan Prescott to perform. They need to win those ground ball battles. They need to win those turnovers because what got them in the trouble against Oneonta and to an extent Plattsburgh was sloppy turnovers and allowing them to kind of just fast break their way up the turf, play a really fast-paced style of offense. And Oswego kind of more precise. They don't rely on hard shots. They rely on screens and setting players and setting screens and picks and all that stuff to make a play work. Those other teams, that's not really how SUNY lacrosse works. It's a lot of fast-paced, shoot the ball as hard as you possibly can and look to bang a ball off the post and in. So
let it whip.
It's going to be 1 in the midfield.
I'm going Turge on this one. You guys both made great points, but the offense I think is just going to be got to be muy bueno. Last one, switching over to the women's lacrosse team. Right now, they are 3rd seed in the playoffs with only 2 games left in the season. Next Wednesday, they face Cortland, and with a win, they could get a first-round bye. Guys, how important is this first-round bye for this women's lacrosse team? I'll have you start.
Oh, my goodness. I mean, a first-round bye is massive, and I feel like we're at the point in the year where it's tough. You want to play that first game, but I feel like Oswego could definitely benefit from just a little bit of time off. I mean, they've had a pretty busy schedule in lacrosse terms, playing usually about 2 games a week, give or take, a midweek, and then usually something on Saturday, maybe Sunday or Friday. They could use that break. I mean, Sarah Kamide has played a lion's share of the minutes, 700 minutes, and goaltending, a pretty stressful and pretty active position in lacrosse. You end up being a part of the defense half the time, making passes. Sela Wiley, Lembo, McConnell getting top minutes. Maddie Davis just coming back in the lineup. I'm sure they could all use a little bit of time off, work on tactics, and figure out how they can dissect their opponent.
I'm going to go with consistency, and I really don't think this bye would be very important. The reason why I say this, though, is, Jared, like you mentioned, every single week it's been a Wednesday and Saturday affair. This week it'll be Wednesday against Cortland, and that first round is that Saturday. So I think it's really going to be going down to consistency. Why change your schedule on your body, on really what the athletes are being able to put in during the week? Great, a little bit of rest is nice, but when you're consistently playing well in the way they're trending, I wouldn't change it.
Confidence is key, Turge, and that first round bye is a little bit of extra swagger.
I'm not going to lie, Jared had that, and then the last statement right there for Turge sold it for the win. You come out of here with another win. Consistency is key. I will say that. But great job tonight to you, too.
I appreciate it. You gave it really good.
An actually very serious Laker showdown.
A very serious, not really as much of a screaming fiasco, and really unbelievable, but nothing crazy. But yeah, overall,
we know our stuff sometimes.
We do know our stuff sometimes, but it'll be an eventful weekend here at the Laker Turf and over at the Diamond as Laker Athletics is in full swing going into the playoff tilt. From Tommy Talario, Jared Wakefield, I'm Thomas Sturgeon. We'll see you in a few weeks to wrap up the playoffs.